Hey there, Ryan Reynolds here. It's a new year, and you know what that means. No, not the diet. Resolutions. A way for us all to try and do a little bit better than we did last year. And my resolution, unlike big wireless, is to not be a raging and raise the price of wireless on you every chance I get. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited. See mintmobile.com for details.
Hey everyone, here's a little bonus that breaks the question format we've been doing thus far. This is an interview with Hollywood costumer and my friend, Jennifer May Nickel. If you've been a longtime listener of the podcast, you might recognize Jennifer's name as the costume designer for Gotham Knights. That's right, the show with the impeccably dressed Misha Collins as Harvey Dent, aka Two-Face. I actually first met Jennifer at the San Diego Comic-Con back in 2023 during the WGA and SAG strikes. I'm just going to play our conversation from here, but please check out the podcast description for relevant links. Also, apologies for the audio quality. I tried to clean this up, but we found out after recording that Jennifer's earpods were dying. And also, you can unfortunately hear my husband in our shared office behind me for just the first couple minutes. I promise he goes elsewhere. Now, on to the episode.
Well, can we start by having you introduce yourself to listeners? Because we probably will have new listeners that haven't heard your previous episode.
Hey everybody, my name is Jennifer May Nickel, and I was the costume designer for Gotham Knights, which is probably the reason why you're listening right now.
And I think most listeners might already know about this, but we just wanted to catch up because I had you on in a mid-season bonus between seasons 1 and 2, but now you've had some big life changes. I mean, I don't know how you want to describe that.
How does one describe this? A very large windstorm hit Southern California and started fires in several locations throughout Los Angeles. And tragically, on January 8th, our house and all of our neighbors' homes and 95% of our entire community burned to the ground. And my husband and I lost our home, and we lost everything in it.
And so, yeah, your whole community was affected. I mean, what has community support looked like on the ground in LA in the, week plus since then?
The most amazing support that there has been from our union. The union and our friends have really, really come together for us. We just had a notary at our friend's house to help us with papers, and she came to us for free and just helped as a way to help. And our friend set us up with her. The community is really, everyone has shown up in force for all of us, and it's really been a beautiful and wonderful thing to see. And it is still sinking into us, everything that we have lost, but all of the community and all of the love has been the way that we're getting through right now and reminding us how much we have.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, I am glad to see that it hasn't disappeared off the news after only a week, because I do feel like these large natural disasters, we see the story moves on, and I feel like that hasn't been the case, at least not yet. That makes me glad.
Yeah. It just in our community alone, I read this morning that it's over 10,000 homes, and that's just the homes that have been counted so far. like our home has not even been counted yet. So that does not even reflect our home, our little street, our neighbors. That's just part of Altadena. And there's, if you look at the map, there's still a very large chunk that is 100% gone, that hasn't been counted yet. And it, if there was 1 in 50 homes standing, that I don't even think that is an accurate ratio for, in my mind. It's probably like 1 in 70 homes standing out of right now 10,000. I'm sure it's going to jump up to 15,000 just from seeing the chunk of map that still hasn't been counted. And just for people in smaller towns, think of how many homes, like the whole town would be gone. And it's almost unfathomable that all of it is gone.
And the few, I mean, to be fair, also the few remaining homes, it's not like they're unscathed, even if they manage to
Correct.
stay standing.
Yeah.
The amount of like soot and
smoke damage and yeah, it's in a way, I am happy for the people that their homes are standing, but they might have an even harder fight than some of us who have clear proof there is nothing left. You know, like I think they're going to have a very tough road ahead of them too, getting the kind of aid and support that they need, because technically their home is still standing, but that doesn't mean they can actually live there, and that doesn't mean it's safe. So
yeah, and of course, if there's only a limited pot of money.
Yeah.
I think it's hard.
And when you think about, you know, the tens of thousands of families, and that's just Altadena. That's not even all of the rest of the fires, but it does look like for people losing their homes, we have the biggest loss out of everyone. But we're an amazing and beautiful community. It's the reason why we moved there, because one, we had a gorgeous view of mountain. But it's a very artist-centric kind of space. We were a community that has beautiful, beautiful architecture, like beautiful Victorian homes, Edwardian, artisan craftsman homes, beautiful mid-century modern homes, like any kind of beautiful architecture from the last 150 years you could find in Altadena. Sometimes, like, just by looking like down the street, they would have all the different examples, and it was just gorgeous with beautiful pine trees that are hundreds of years old. And we had what we call Christmas Tree Lane with these beautiful deodar pines. And while the homes of Christmas Tree Lane are gone, the trees are still standing, and that is quintessentially Altadena. Like, a lot might be gone, but the heart of the community is still there, and that all of that heart is going to be needed to rebuild over the next few years.
And I feel like something that got missed early in their reporting, I feel like it's changed, but I think early in the reporting, people were like, oh, LA's on fire. So what if the McMansions of the rich and famous burn? Like, they'll be fine. And I think that's a really important point to make, is that Altadena, like, is historically much more like the craftsman neighborhood, right? Like, and it's workers.
It's also a historically Black community as well. And there are a lot of people who their families have owned these homes for generations, and they have lost everything. Not everyone had homeowners insurance, because a lot of the insurance companies were actively dropping clients up here in any way, shape, or form they can. My husband and I had to fight tooth and nail last year to keep our insurance. We kept getting denied, and we eventually won, and we are so grateful for it. But not everyone like had that happen. And while insurance is not going to be enough for us to rebuild, we at least have something. And it is devastating to me that these homes that people and their families have lived in for generations are just gone. And there's not a lot of resources out there for everyone.
Yeah. And I'm sure some of these homes were kind of the family investment, right? You were like, well, I don't have a lot of cash in the bank, but I'm going to pass this home down. And
exactly. That is 100% what a lot of people's homes were.
can I ask, have you had, I mean, I've seen the pictures, but like when you had the chance to go back and see where your home was that cathartic, upsetting, like all of the above?
All of the above. JP said that in all of our time and all of our tragedies together, he's never seen me cry and break down the way that I did when we rounded the corner of our street and saw where we used to be. In that moment for me, it felt like I just watched someone like die while holding them. It was something that the love and just the love that we put into that home. So much of our lives, our career, like.
Well, like the Vanity article said y'all were there since like 2008, right? Like it wasn't like.
That was technically, so we've been in California since 2008. We were in our home since 2018. Just but what I want people to just try to maybe think about or visualize for themselves. I don't know everyone's situation, but I know when I would be driving home from work or wherever doing whatever, my heart would feel such joy and a sense of relief when I would turn onto our street, because as soon as you go to turn onto our street, you could see our house. And then you see the mountains in the background. And to me, it was just beautiful. And I'm like, I'm home. And then people, if they can think about that in their own way, and like, then all of a sudden just seeing it the next day just be gone. Not even a shell, like just decimated. It was the hardest thing ever. But then seeing our neighbor was there too, and we just hugged and cried for about 5 minutes straight, it felt like. And then as soon as we all like just could gain our breath again, I started like going over to the home, and the first thing I saw was where my office was. And on the ground was a little metal elephant that a friend had given me. It was the first thing I saw. And I was just so overjoyed to have something. There really is not much left, but there are like those little bits of joy. And I know like you can see this, Sadie, but others won't be able to. I brought this over. We went back the next day, and one of our friends found in a cabinet where all of my beautiful shoes were. But I also had all my like vases and stuff in there too. And my favorite vase, it was still nothing else was there. Nothing, everything else was gone. But this beautiful Art Nouveau vase that another friend had given us, who actually, like, he's the person that started the GoFundMe campaign for us. He gave this to us. And I was already mourning it. I was already sad that this didn't exist anymore. And then it was an amazing, wonderful surprise that it existed still. And so it is terrible. It is unfathomable. It is still like this. We're going to be grieving this for a while. This is not an overnight thing. And everything we have to do just to have lost everything is so overwhelming. But just finding those little things in all of the ashes has been just wonderful. And the artist me is already planning some fun things art-wise for shrapnel and the pieces of pottery that we've are strewn about everywhere. And you know, I am like you, and I'm someone who will find the beauty and humor in the worst of times, and that is how I cope and get through. And I am looking forward to being able to make some art out of this, because I think that's going to be one of the most healing factors of all of it, to make something beautiful out of the ashes.
Yeah, the world, especially with the pottery shard, the world's most intense kintsugi, like just really start making some pieces with that.
Yeah, yeah. And that it's going to be what I need to heal.
What are your
And
like current, like what are your concerns in the next 3 months that people could help with, that are or help anybody in your community who's gone through something like this? Because there's like the 3-year mark, and there's the 3-month mark, and there's the 3-week mark, and I feel like they all have different needs.
yeah, the 3-month mark is going to be incredibly helpful, and also a 1-year mark is going to be incredibly helpful, because everyone wants to help right now, which is wonderful. But you know, when 15,000 people are trying to just even get their heads on straight about what happened, and they don't have anywhere to live, that is like one of the hardest things there is out there. I I know a lot of people are like doing a website about price gouging and this and that, which is helpful, but it's also turning out that some of the reporting is false. And that's extremely unhelpful for everyone that is currently displaced, trying to find housing for the near future, because that's ending up taking away resources that were perfectly fine. So, you know, like really, truly helping people to vet things out, and maybe, you know, helping people to think before they speak. You know, thinking the problem through instead of just wanting to help, because so much of it is that, like, we don't have time to vet things ourselves. There's just so much coming at us that I'm like, oh dear God, I hope this isn't a scam. So if people are trying to send resources, if people are trying to post resources, vetting them out and saying how they've been vetted, saying that they know this is real, showing that things are actually legitimate. Or if you've heard of a person who's had a problem with FEMA, which we all are right now. I don't actually know that I know anyone who's gotten any kind of FEMA funding personally. If you have heard of someone who has gone through an ordeal but actually had success at getting help, what did they do? What was that process, so that others can know and be prepared? It is really trying to help us all think through the problem, because I know I haven't gotten more than like 2.5, 3 hours of sleep a night And neither has my husband. We're not eating because we feel like throwing up all the time. Like we are not our best selves right now. And we are just two people out of the thousands. So for people on the outside looking, helping to be the thoughts, helping to be our brains, helping to look through processes and not just sending overwhelming amounts of information that, I'm neurodivergent, and it is too overwhelming. I see a giant email that takes me a minute to scroll down, and I am done. I can't even begin to process it. If you see stuff like that, even helping people, not just myself, like helping other neurodivergents, breaking down things into shorter combinable lists, helping with services for people who are handicapped and displaced, people with different disabilities need help right now because we are not knowing about what those resources out there are. And it's like, we don't even know what we don't know.
I feel like that's something that when we see a disaster movie or a tragedy in a show or something, there's like a clear process where it's like, oh, and then the social worker comes, and then there's magically insurance handled this thing, and like you go to the hospital or you start working with the contractor to rebuild your home, and it's like real life doesn't have those actually clear steps, and no one is actually telling you which paperwork to fill out and when it's due, and so the mental load.
I will say the only movie that accurately portrays what's currently happening is Harry Potter at the end of Deathly Hallows, when they're all just shell shocked in Hogwarts, and sitting there with blankets on, and Filch is like trying to clean up and then just gives up because he's like, I don't know what to do with it. Like, he's pushing the broom and then he's like, but why? That's the accurate portrayal of where we are right now. Not the beautiful like other things that are helpful right now though are people. There's a lot of volunteers right now, which is great, but those volunteers actually need support as well. So one thing I know just outright is like with my union, because we're the Costume Designers Guild, a lot of my union is handling the influx of clothing donations that are going on. And while they have enough volunteers there, they don't have a way to feed those volunteers. And so even people like finding ways to donate food to the different places where people are volunteering is helpful. Finding ways of feeding the first responders, finding different ways of supporting the volunteers with what they're doing to volunteer for us is helpful. Like, I think there are probably enough clothing donations that have happened for the near future. Like, there's enough clothing that has been donated for everyone to, meet immediate needs. A year from now, or 3 months from now, when people have actual like longer term housing that they can actually have clothes and put them somewhere, then we'll need probably more clothing donations. Then we'll need to have work clothes instead of just basic needs clothes. Like, there is not just from like on my experience, but every single person who lost everything, they need to spend every penny that they receive on rebuilding their house. And so any tangible donations are going to be extremely appreciated. Right now, no one has anywhere to put them. And that is part of the hard part, because so many companies are giving a lot, and it's wonderful and it's needed, but it's more needed in 3 months or even in a month or 2 months when people have found longer term housing. But it's also going to take a very hot minute for all of that to happen, because 15,000 families being displaced, there was already a housing crisis here in Los Angeles, and it just got worse. Altadena, one of the wonderful things about it is places there had more land with their property than a lot of other parts of Los Angeles. So a lot of people had been building ADUs and other families had been living in those. So it's not just like a property is gone, but multiple homes within a property. And that's just single family homes and properties, not to mention apartment buildings and so on. There's so much need that's going to happen over the next few years that one, figuring out ways to help, like not boots on the ground, just internet vetting things, finding ways to send food to volunteers. All the restaurants in LA are currently really hurting. They're in the last 2 weeks, their income has gone down by 80% because so many people have fled the town and haven't come back. So many people lost their homes and are like my husband and I don't want to eat because we just want to throw up. And then there are others who, because of all of the economic uncertainty within the entertainment industry and now these fires, don't want to spend money going out to eat. So it's like, if you can call up a restaurant and like pay a meal forward for some volunteers and have it sent to these places, like calling up these volunteer services and being like, I want to send a meal, what can I do? Stuff like that is really, really helpful. And it's hard for me to even understand what else is needed at the moment, because again, of the like, well, we need things, but we don't have anywhere to put it, or any, like, we will use it, but we can't use it now. So reaching out to companies and saying, hey, it's great that you're doing this. Could you think of maybe, offering this as a long-term thing instead of a short-term thing? I don't have time to do that. None of us has time to do that. So, it's great that companies want to give mattresses, but we don't have,
anywhere to put them.
Yeah, we need them. We're going to need them. They're very expensive, but there's nowhere to put it.
It's like the infrastructure is missing here, where it's like,
yes.
We would love to replace everything that you lost. You're like, great. Yes. I also had a home where I could put all those things. And I currently, living out of friend's house, car, leasing, whatever, know.
Yeah. And I feel very fortunate that my husband and I, like, our friend was just like, please go to my place. Like, that is fortunate. And we're very lucky for that. And not everyone has had that. And it is like, it's just devastating.
Yeah. And then when it affects everyone around you, it's harder to have the mutual aid networks that you might have, you might see if it was just a small neighborhood fire and like you still lose some homes.
Yeah.
But when it's the whole city, I mean, you get a double whammy in a lot of ways.
And Los Angeles right now is, I was telling a friend, we're all collectively on a knife's edge right now, because like the Santa Ana winds are supposed to kick up again this week, and the conditions have been dry, which in a lot of ways is good right now because we don't want it to rain because mudslide. But we wish there was just a little more moisture in the air than there currently is, because we don't want those winds to kick up again, the whole city be without power and people displaced even more than we already are, and more fires starting. We're still not out of the fire, if that makes sense. We might not see the flames, but we're still in the fire.
Yeah.
And we cannot breathe yet.
Well, and also, I mean, kind of literally the other thing is areas that might not have been, directly impacted by the flames, all of that smoke and all kinds of, toxic tiny particles. Like I guess I'm glad everybody post-COVID stocked up on N95s because
Yeah.
like that's another, and that also I'm sure makes it hard for local restaurants where people are like, why would I go out to eat? I don't even want to go outside.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a lot of it. And one thing I will say, if that I was just thinking of, if anyone who is listening and has lost their home in the fire, there a lot of, if you do need immediate donation, a lot of the places that are giving will allow people to pick up the donations for you. There's a process to it, but it's not a hard one. But you do have to provide different proofs of residency, and have those friends have all of that information for you. So, because there's no way on top of what we all already have to do, we can be constantly going around everything.
I was gonna say, disaster relief is a full-time job because it's
It
not
is.
only, it's like we have all this new paperwork and legal stuff that we need to deal with in order to get the correct federal relief. And also, so and so said that there's, this company is offering some great way to help, except for I can't be there from 3 to 5. And oh, by the way, people still
Yeah.
have to have jobs to some degree, and I
Yeah.
don't know how much
Which
people are able to balance that.
anyone like, I joke that how convenient that we don't have jobs right now, because this has become multiple full-time jobs for us. And like, yes, it makes everything worse not having a job because we're definitely scared about income. But my heart is going out to the people who do have jobs and have to go to their jobs, because again, none of us are our best selves right now. None of us are operating like anywhere near 80%. And I feel fortunate that on top of my panic and anxiety that I already have, that I don't have the anxiety of having to perform at a job well and worry about keeping my job because of everything. And then being away from your family during the daytime, on top of all the uncertainty, like people who have kids who have to go into their job. There's so many factors to it that are just heartbreaking. And God bless the people who are still working through this extra, because it's a lot.
Yeah, anybody working the fast food job, it's like, please have a tip the same size of the meal that I just purchased, because I don't know how you're
Mm-hmm.
here and functioning, knowing
Mm-hmm.
what could be going on anywhere else, in your
Yeah,
life.
yeah, it's just amazing.
Well, I did want to ask more specifically. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
what does the future look like for you? Like you said, you're gonna rebuild. That's probably, that's not going to be a 1 year experience. I can tell you that. Having done
Yes,
construction that was
yes.
informed to be 2 months and then was 6. How are you thinking about kind of moving forward?
I am. We're wrapping our heads around the realism of it, because with supply and demand, it's going to be tough and it's going to take a very long time. So we're coming to grips with that. What me always trying to focus on the positive and feel at least good about something in all of this is like, well, I am a designer.
You won't have to hire
and I
somebody for that.
and I have worked on home construction before. So while I'm not an architect, which is what my mom always wanted me to be, and so maybe my mom was right. But I know design. I don't know everything about construction, but I know enough to get like through. I know how to build a floor plan. Like I know a lot of things that are going to come in handy. And as my husband was like, all this work we did on the house is gone. all of the hours and all of the work, and it's all gone. And I'm like, yeah, but we learned how to do it better because we did it. And so now we're going to move forward. And that's going to be a resource to us, because if we hadn't done any of that, our brains would be in a worse place right now because we wouldn't know how to do it. But we do know how to do it. We know how to do landscape irrigation. We know like different electrical things. That's him. That's not me. Me and electricity don't get along well. But just about everything else I can handle.
Right. I know how to
Like,
tile the bathroom in the most efficient way possible. That's not going to
exactly.
get grout everywhere. Like we've
Yep.
learned by
Mhm.
doing. So
I know how to caulk things. I've built roofs. I've laid drywall. I know how to do these things, and so we're just gonna do it. And like, you know, I do hope that I get work again because that would be nice. But if I'm there laying tile and drywall and everything, again, at least I know how to do it. Or if someone is doing it, I at least know if they're doing it wrong.
that's right. We'll have one of those like Amish style house building, barn building parties, or just a bunch of people
Oh
are going to
yeah.
show up
Oh
like, all
yeah.
right, where's the 2x4? I'm ready.
Yep. Yeah. And then one of the other only things to survive was something in our backyard that I had made a cover for out of marine vinyl. So let me tell you, I'm going to be custom making marine vinyl covers for everything and possibly the house when we actually have things that need covered again.
Right. You know the correct protective layer now. So
I so I got the marine vinyl as a way of protecting from all the UV rays, because outdoor covers here in LA don't last very long because of all of the sun we get. They disintegrate pretty much like within a year, and they're really expensive. So I was like, I know how to make it. I'm just going to make it. And now I'm going to do that with everything. But it wasn't even melted. It was still like there were just a spot or two where like there was a little bubble where some of the outer vinyl just like raised a tiny bit. And that, yeah, like even the stitches like were, and
fine.
yeah, yeah.
I'm just
This,
picturing a
and
house
again,
with like a giant tarp over it now. You're like, all right, we can
that,
leave for the weekend. Everything's locked
yeah,
down.
that will be neat because I spent so much time thinking and taking care of the yard because of the high winds. Usually the high winds are what is actually destructive. And I have gotten really talented at battening down the hatches quickly. So also what people might not know, because JP and I are pretty private, he had knee surgery 2 days before Thanksgiving. So all of the things I've been saying, I was doing. Like I was battening down the hatches because he physically can't because he's in recovery. Um, like loading the cars, that was me. Like that he was on watch duty, like, and he had to go to PT. Like there were things. So I was just battening down all the hatches. I was taking care of everything in the yard to make sure nothing would get picked up and fly into a window, and like accidentally kill us that way. I was keeping tabs on the trees that were in neighbors' yards that I was like, these are a hazard. I'm going to make sure that, I am not spending too much time in here, but I'm keeping my eye and I'm listening for the crackling sound, because so much of what things often are is, death and tragedy from a tree falling on someone's house. And it was all of those things that I was worried about. Hilariously, I did a really, really good job at making at battening everything down, that none of the things that now are gone in the fire were displaced by wind. They were all still.
So you did such a great job for the thing you could expect.
Yeah. That's a
Uh,
good way of putting it, Sadie.
yeah. That's the kid building a sandcastle in the tide zone, and you're like, look, I did a great job of like getting this area dried and organized. It's like, and you didn't expect this like insane tsunami to come through. You're like, no, I was ready for the
Yeah.
tide. I had that handled.
Yeah.
What do
Like
you mean?
all of the Christmas decorations that were outside, I grabbed the things that would have blown away and secured them and took care of them. And but I had zip tied some Christmas lights around our fence when I put them up this year. And JP was like, "Oh God, are you gonna have enough time to take the lights down?" I was like, "I don't need to take the lights down. I secured those babies. I know what the winds here are like, and I made it so those things are gonna stay on there." And damn it, they are still zip tied to the remnants of our damn fence.
Oh God, that's like a Christmas horror movie. Just like
It
burned
is.
fence and Christmas lights slowly melting as
Yeah.
they're more
I'll
exposed.
have to send you a photo because it made me laugh. I was like, I did a really good job tying those babies. Real good job.
The wins we didn't know we needed, but we have.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez. Oh man. Well, are there any final thoughts you have about how people can help you? I'm obviously going to link the GoFundMe in the
Thank you.
episode. Are there other like specific orgs that you know are really making a difference on the ground that people should keep an eye out for?
Well, Random Acts, they're, I don't know what they're going to do, but I know they want to do something to help the entire community. And that is always a good place to give because you saw what they did for North Carolina and you've seen what they've done in the past for so many other natural disasters. That's a good place. Again, if you're seeing resources come in or seeing, leads on different ways to get things done, helping people to vet things out before you just pass it on to someone. And so that or even saying, hey, I got this resource. I know it's legit. What can I do to reach out to them for you? Those kind of things, helping to take things off of other people's plates as much as humanly possible is helpful. Helping to feed people is helpful. Those are the things. Being from Pittsburgh, the Mr. Rogers in me keeps thinking about what he said before about, in times like these, look for the helpers. And that's been a saying of comfort for me right now because we are looking for the helpers, but helping us think ahead to know what we need is helpful.
And maybe also keeping in mind a month away from
Yeah.
now or 2 months away from now, thinking about,
Yeah.
great, most people have homes. Now what can we do?
Now what can we
Because
do? Yeah. If you work for a corporation that does care about giving, talking to them and saying, okay, come March, like if you work for Pyrex or Snapware, I know Tupperware is bankrupt, but those things are something that people will need the donations of in the near future, just not right now. So it's good to start planning those things though. So if you are working for companies that want to do something, starting to talk with them about how to properly do it instead of just throwing it out there right now when we can't handle all of the intake at the moment. So yeah, even water bottle companies, that will be helpful. Appliances will be helpful. In California, most people move their refrigerators with them. I know.
that's
I don't
insane.
The East Coast gal in me does not understand this, but I also have a deeply intimate relationship with my refrigerator, and I have an anal retentiveness for it that yes, I know, but I'm insane about what my refrigerator is. So, like, a lot of people are going to be in a place where they need appliances, people who know resources there. So start to think about who you are. We all are good at something. What are you good at in that you want to help? Are you good at sewing? People will need people to do alterations for them when we're getting these clothes that are coming in, because it's not, things aren't going to fit us because we're not going to the store buying them. You know, we're being given them. So people are going to need things fitted to them. People are going to need like bedding, you know, people are going to need utensils for eating when we eventually feel like eating again. So who do you work for? What are you good at doing? Are you good at organizing photographs and know someone that was in the fire? The amount of photographs that we now need to organize just for insurance purposes is overwhelming. So if you are good at spreadsheets, your friends need help with spreadsheets. Like I am good at them, but I again am not working on full speed right now. So spreadsheets are helpful to people. Like they're just thinking outside the box that we literally no longer have is helpful.
Yeah, put your skill set to use, whatever that means. Like if you're good at being muscle, fine, great. Go start help shoveling. Like, let's go.
If you're good at real estate law, put together some resources there. You know, there's like, because I know there are a few of you in this fandom. Like,
I mean, I was gonna say, is it kind of weird to be tangentially related to a fandom that's quite intense in this time?
yeah, but it's a good thing. Like, seriously, I like, man, I am for an intense fandom right now.
I was gonna say,
You know?
yeah, it's like thank God I'm involved in a major fandom. Imagine if it was like I can't even think of like a small show fandom. You'd be like, well, 6 people reached out to me, and I'm very touched. But supernatural people are crazy in the best way.
Best way, and there's wonderful ways that if they want to help, they can. If they don't, that's okay too. Like it is everyone's own personal choice. No one should feel like beholden to anything. Like take care of yourself. Like there's, you know, we'll all figure things out. And again, if you want to help, I can't now. This will still be here. There will still be needs, and we're still just going to need the emotional support for a very long time. One of the hardest things that has been for me to get through is like losing all the fabric. And I was like all the beautiful things I would have made with the fabric that I already love for other people because that is who I am. I enjoy making things for others, you know? And as you know, I was in the process of making things for you guys. And it breaks me to my core that they're gone. The beautiful things that I made for Misha that are gone. It is because I am a person who I put my heart and my soul into what I do and what I make. There is a piece of me that goes into the things that I make. And it tells me that that went up in flames and that someone is now not going to get to enjoy the thing I put so much love and heart into. And I know there's more fabric in the world. I know there are more tools and supplies, but I'm also like, when am I going to be able to do that again? My maker heart is also very sad right now. And the things that I do for my soul, like making things for others, is something that I'm not going to be able to do future. So even if you're just like, send me a photo of something you're making for someone else, the joy I will get out of that. It's like people sending photos of amazing vintage thrift store finds that they have found for themselves or giving as a gift. I am the weird person who loves that. It is like spread the joy in all the little weird ways because someone is going to appreciate it. Even if you're like, no one's going to appreciate this, someone will.
I love that. Yeah, I know. It's like if even you can't work on a craft right now, it's like, well, show me your progress pics. I want to see those stuff you're doing.
I want to see that. Like if you're working on something, even if you want like advice,
That's your new thing, digital consulting for sewing.
God, that might be my thing. Sadie, you've sent me progress photos before, and I'm like, oh, here, you should use this type of interfacing. Like, that is how my brain just naturally works anyway. That is not hurting or costing my brain anything. That's not going to keep me from doing anything I need to do. That actually makes me happy that I'm getting to flex that muscle. Yeah. So, just saying.
This is very strong Phoenix energy. I think this is the right hashtag Phoenix Task Force. That's my thing now. I'm into it.
Yes. It is.
Well, are there any last thoughts you want to share, or should we? I mean, I feel like that's such a good note to wrap it on, but I want to make sure.
Well, I'm just going to say my one thing of the other phrase the other saying phrase, whatever, that has been ringing through my head very, very loudly, like a goddamn, giant bell. My favorite Beatles lyric, which is, and in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. So just move forward in life with love and grace, and it will come back to you, because that is what is happening for us right now.
If you want to join the hashtag Phoenix Task Force, as Jennifer and I somewhat jokingly called it, and help Jennifer and JP rise from the ashes, I've linked their GoFundMe in the podcast description. I've also linked to the Random Acts Disaster Relief Recovery Fund. Random Acts, or RA, is a 100% volunteer-run nonprofit. I've also added a GoFundMe link for someone on the Geekscape podcast network who also lost their home in the fires. I know I'm new to this network, but I think it's really important to show solidarity and support each other. So you can find that link here, and I'll play a little clip at the very end of this episode. Lastly, I've linked to a final GoFundMe for a Creation Entertainment employee who also lost her home in the fires. All right, so the credits. Editorial support was provided by Dr. Anna Funk. Music was composed and performed by Chris Scott. Cover art was designed by Liz Hand. In Defense of Fandom is part of the Geekscape podcast network. If you like the show, giving us a review on Apple Podcasts is a great way to help support this work and help even more listeners discover us. Your support is deeply appreciated.
Hey there, folks. This is Katie Hampton from the Napping Through Happy Hour podcast on the Geekscape Network. We are reaching out to let everybody know that one of our Geekscapists, Dustin from the $2 Late Fees podcast, has entirely lost his home. And there is a GoFundMe for him to help support and give what they need. Unfortunately, they got a wind warning and not an evacuation warning, and the next thing they knew, their house was gone. So there is a GoFundMe started right now. If you go to bit.ly/Dustin Aaron, DUSTIN, ERIN. It will take you to their GoFundMe page. They have lost their homes due to the Eaton fire. We are looking at a lot of devastation out here in Los Angeles right now. Luckily, I am safe, but we wanted to make sure that we help support. So please go to bit.ly/Dustin Aaron to go help out for them. Just want you all to know that Geekscape cares, and everybody who's been affected by the LA fires, please reach out if you need more help. Thank you so much, everyone. Happy listening.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.